As I mentioned earlier, it is recommended that you try to build a reference library as soon as possible. There are a number of books on locksmithing. Check your local bookstore for what is available. A couple of journals that you may also be interested in are the Locksmith Ledger and the National Locksmith. The internet is a great source of information. The actual manufacturer of the locks have very helpful websites. On our website, LocksmithDVD.com, you'll find a page of links to many of the locksmiths, manufacturers, and suppliers. Another great source of information is your local locksmith supplier. You will need to establish a relationship with a supplier in order to purchase your initial supplies. Get to know the salesman, and most of them will be happy to help you get started as a locksmith. Also, you can learn a lot by studying the catalogs that are available from the suppliers and the manufacturers. As far as publications, I'd recommend this, the Locksmith Ledger. You may be interested in subscribing to that. And another very popular locksmith magazine is the National Locksmith. So those are two very good publications. You may want to subscribe to one or both of those. Here's a publication, Keynotes, is put out by ALOA, the Associated Locksmiths of America. And I'm going to talk more about that association in a few minutes. But if you join that association, then you would also receive their magazine, or Keynotes magazine. All of the big locksmith supply houses have big catalogs, and they are tending to lean more towards being digital, and so sometimes you can just get these on a CD, and I would not be surprised if it's somewhere in the future they even quit producing these great big huge catalogs. But if you can get a hold of these, this is from Clark Security, one of the country's largest suppliers of locksmith supplies. They have all kinds of information in them, and you could study through this for just hours and hours to see what all is in here. And if you can get these and just kind of look through them, it will familiarize you with what is available from a supplier. You'll see products that are new to you, and you'll start to learn about exactly what is out there. So when you do come across it, you may already have seen that in a catalog and have some idea as to what it is. Okay, so that's Clark Distributor. Another large supplier is Intermountain Lock. And Intermountain is more on the West Coast, but they will ship probably anywhere in the country. So this catalog is also available. Again, this is Intermountain Lock. Their headquarters is in Denver, but they have distribution centers in other cities. Again, mostly in the West. Now, with the other one I showed you, Clark Security, they have warehouses nationwide. But either one of these will sell to you if you're in the locksmith business, and contact them and get an account set up, and they will sell to you and ship to you probably anywhere in the United States. Now, the last catalog I showed you from Intermountain Lock, I just wanted to show you that they do have their own key blank catalog. And so if you're looking for a key blank catalog, this is one place that you could contact them and see if they would either give you one or sell you one of their key blank catalogs. So again, that's Intermountain Lock. Another large supplier is HL Flake. I'd like you to be familiar with them. And then another one off the West Coast is Wilco Supply. And I like their catalog. They're in Oakland, California. I like their catalog because they include a lot of the schematics for the locks right in the catalog, so I don't have to go look for them anywhere else. If I want to find a part and a part number for many locks, they will be right there in the catalog, and that's one of the features of the Wilco Supply catalog. You can also pick up manufacturers' product catalogs. This is a catalog from Medico. Medico makes high security locks, and we're not going to be really dealing with their locks until much later in the program, course number 18. We get into high security locks, and that particular course does focus on the Medico lock. But all of the lock manufacturers pretty much have catalogs that are also available. As a professional locksmith, you should consider joining the Locksmith Association. Associations provide a number of opportunities for you to meet with and learn from fellow locksmiths. Many offer formal classes where you can keep up on the latest developments and learn new skills. They can often help with research and provide ideas on ways that you can grow your business. Most importantly, they help to maintain professional standards in the industry. A few associations that you may want to look at are ALOA SPA, which stands for the Associated Locksmiths of America Security Professionals Association. It's located in Dallas, Texas. SAVTA, the Safe and Vault Technicians Association, and that is a division of ALOA SPA, which is also located in Dallas, Texas. And then there is the ILA, the Institutional Locksmiths Association, located in Naperville, Illinois. You may also find state, regional, and local locksmiths associations. Check your phone book and the internet to see if any of these are available in your area. Start collecting as many different types of locks and keys as you can. Yard sales and flea markets are often a good place to find cheap locks. Try to obtain a key blank catalog so you can identify the keys that you collect. Try to identify the locks you collect by which category they belong to and also which manufacturer made the lock. Try to identify which key blank will fit into the keyway. This will be easier once you have a collection of keys that you can actually try in the locks. Later, you may be able to use the locks in the rekeying and master keying exercises once we get to those topics. Also, start paying attention to the locks on every door you come to. Don't worry if it seems there are an overwhelming number of locks. All of the locks in each category are going to operate on the same basic principle using very similar components. It will not be long before you will be able to recognize most locks by category and know how they work. This concludes the basic skills part of this course. For those of you who are interested, a bonus section now follows introducing the history of locks. Now that we have some idea of the different types of locks and know a little bit about how locks work, I would like to take a look at the history of locks. We need to do this for 3 reasons. 1, as a professional locksmith, you should be aware of the history of your chosen field. 2, if you understand the history of locks, it helps you to understand how locks are designed and how they work. And 3, because a number of certification tests have questions on this subject. Technically, a lock is a device that prevents access or use by requiring special knowledge or equipment. That is, it is a device that will not allow entry or use of something like a car unless the correct key or code is entered into it. I'd like to take a few minutes and go over some of the earliest types of locks and ways that people secured their doors. The need for locks has existed since the beginning of civilization, as people have always wanted to protect themselves and their possessions. Probably one of the first methods of keeping a door shut was by simply barricading the door with a barricade bar. This device is still in use today, by the way. We don't know when the first doors were held shut like this. It could have been as long as 10,000 years ago. We simply have no way of knowing for sure. But a barricade bar is simply a stick or a piece of wood. Today it might be a piece of pipe or a piece of iron that is placed across the door to hold it shut and then has some way to secure it on both sides. The barricade bar does not meet our definition of a lock, since anyone can remove the bar with no special skills, tools, or knowledge. And if they could remove the bar, it would mean they were already on the inside of the room, because the typical barricade bar will be on the inside. Now, locks are like any other consumer product. As soon as people start using them, there's always somebody that's trying to figure out a way to improve on the product. And at some point, people figured out they could shorten down the barricade bar and attach it to the door in such a way as you could simply slide it back and forth to lock the door. This was going to be much more convenient than having to keep track of a bar every time you wanted to lock your door. So this was probably the next improvement on the barricade bar, the sliding bolt. Now, a primitive sliding bolt like this still would not meet our definition of a lock, but I'll come back to this in just a minute. This next sketch illustrates what is referred to as a Greek knot, which was nothing more than an intricate knot which was tied by the owner. The idea was to have a knot that was so intricate that if a person untied it, they would not be able to put it back exactly like the owner had it, and the owner would know that the knot had been tampered with. This knot would have been on the outside of the door, and therefore would not meet our definition of a lock, because anyone could have actually come by and untied the knot and opened the door. Now I want to come back to the slide bolt we were looking at earlier, because the next improvement the Greeks made did actually meet the criteria we have for a lock. They devised a way to slide the bolt from the outside of the door. This illustration shows what is known as a Greek sickle lock. This is an edge view of the door. This is the edge of the door. There was a hole in the door, a small hole that the key could go through. This is the key. It's made out of iron, and it looked like a sickle. That's where it got the name from, the Greek sickle lock. You simply put the key through the hole, grab the bolt down here, and by rotating the handle, you could slide the bolt back and forth. In his book, The Odyssey, Homer talks about both a rope-tied knot and a sliding bolt lock. We believe the Odyssey was written around 850 BCE, so we know that both the Greek knot and the Greek sickle lock existed at that time, nearly 3,000 years ago. The original Greek knot and the sickle lock could be much older than that. We simply have no way of knowing. The Greek sickle lock does meet our definition of a lock. One problem with the lock was the size of the key. The key could be up to 2 feet long and possibly even longer. That makes for a very large key to carry around. This next drawing illustrates a sliding bolt with a different type of key. A slot was cut in the door beneath the bolt. A key was invented which had prongs that could be used to slide the bolt back and forth. The prongs on the key would match holes in the bolt. These keys would have still been large by our standards, but smaller than a sickle key. We do not know when these were first used, but evidence indicates that similar locks were used in both Greece and Rome, and probably before 600 BCE. And we know from the types of keys that have been recovered that they advanced this lock. Instead of coming up underneath the bar with the prongs on the key, they were able to go with a thinner slot and have the key designed so that it would go in and then turn up and grab the bar like that and pull it back. And then here's a drawing of what a key might look like for this particular lock. Now you can see that from doing this, it was not a real great step to come to the idea that you could put a key in here and simply turn the key and have this shape so that you could move the bar back and have a smaller key. Now the next logical step would be to figure out some way, instead of putting a big gap in your door underneath the bar, would there be a better way to move that locking bolt back to free the door? And in time, the Romans came up with the idea to encase the bolt in a metal case. And figured out a way that they could have a keyhole so that a key could stick in and rotate and grab that bar and move it back. And that was, of course, the first case lock. There would be some type of notch probably somewhere that this bar would grab onto something to hold it so that it wouldn't just move in and out. Probably one for a locked position and one for an unlocked position. And so that, say that the key came in and centered on a post, and then it would come around, and so this would have to be modified a little bit. All of these locks were handmade, of course. There was no mass production of the locks until much later in time. So that every one of these is individually, and it could, you could have, every lock could be possibly different. I'm sure that once a locksmith got a design down, they were going to continue to make that kind of a lock. But they would have had some way for the key to go in and then come around and move that bolt back, pick it up from it, whatever was holding it, and slide it back. Then, in time, they figured out that they could take a spring, and I'm going to just put this spring over here. It could be done many different ways, but a piece of metal that would come down and put pressure on that bolt so that once you moved it with the key, there would be pressure holding it in the locked position, and of course that would have been your first actual spring bolt. Now the next development in the lock probably was some type of warding that was done on the case where the key would be inserted into the lock, and so you would have case warding. And it may have been something just as a simple triangle where the key was slightly fatter at the bottom than at the top. And then of course the keyhole would be adjusted to that. Or it could be something like this where you had an offset in the keyhole. But I'll show you some examples of keys here in just a moment. But the warding got very sophisticated over the years. And so not only would the keyhole be shaped to only accept these keys, but then there would be warding inside the lock so that once the key was in, there might be a piece over here, as we discussed earlier in the warded lock, that the key would have to bypass. And so the key would have to be cut in such a way that there was a gap for the key to bypass the ward. And the wards could be on the end of the key as well as on the side of the key. We cannot say positively who developed the warded lock. We know that it became popular in Rome, and the early Romans are given credit for the development of the case lock and the warded lock, but we cannot definitely say exactly who invented that lock or when it came into use. We know they were popular in Rome, and probably as early as 400 or 500 BCE, they were already in use. Here's an example of a warded key from the Middle Ages. And we can see that, again, the warding is much more involved in what we saw in the earlier locks. Here's another example. And then here's extreme warding on this key right here. I have an example here of a warded case. You can see this part, the design on this, and this little piece here that sticks out, so that the key has to be cut to go into that particular design. And so the very first use of wards would have been to do with simply the design of the key. And here you can see that with this key that it does have other notches for wards here, and it has a notch here for the case ward. And these are still used today. I mean, any key, if you look at the keyway and see the design on the key with grooves and whatnot, that is warding, so that only a particular key will go into that keyway. Now this lock is a much later lock than what I was talking about as far as a warded lock, but I wanted to just show a simple design on a bolt. You can see a keyway here, and the key would have revolved around and grabbed the bolt right here and push the bolt out. And so that's what I'm referring to as the design that was developed in these very early spring bolt locks. Here you can see a spring with a piece on it right here. That this bolt, it's kind of hard to see in the video because it's all one color, but the bolt has a piece that sticks up, and as the key pushed the bolt forward, it would push it up underneath the spring. So currently, the way it is right now, the spring is holding this bolt in the unlocked position, and then as you move it up underneath that, the spring would go up and allow this to come forward. Then it would be holding it in the locked position. This is a picture of a lock that was found in the city of Pompeii in Italy, which was destroyed in 79 AD, or as we say today, CE, Common Era. You can see it looks like a very sophisticated lock for the time. And so we know that many of the developments in locks that I've been talking about, happened prior to this time. But this could have been made the year before the volcano went off, or it could have been made 100 years before the volcano went off. We have no way of really knowing about that. But it does show a very sophisticated lock by that particular point in time. Throughout the Middle Ages, warded locks were made in France, England, Germany, Italy, and probably most of Europe. In time, the wards became more complex. Great skill and a high degree of workmanship were employed in making metal locks. The moving parts of the locks were closely fitted and finished, and the exteriors were lavishly decorated. Even the keys were often a work of art. The security, however, was solely dependent on elaborate warding. The mechanism of the lock being developed had hardly changed at all over several hundred years. One refinement was to conceal the keyhole by a secret shutter, and another was to provide blind keyholes. The Middle Ages lasted from the 5th century to the 15th century, and during that period of time, there was very little improvement in warded locks. About the only improvement was in the warding. They did try to conceal the keyholes in some locks. There were false or blind keyholes added for confusion. There was improvement in craftsmanship and also improvement in artistic design, but there was almost no improvement in the security of the warded lock design itself during this period of time. Now, just to review what we covered on the history of locks, we talked about the barricade bar and the primitive slide bolt. Then we looked at the Greek rope knot and the Greek sickle lock. Then we looked at advances made in Greece and Rome to the slide bolt. Then we looked at the Roman warded case lock, and we talked about advances made during the Middle Ages. The history of locks will be continued. In Course 2, we'll look at the history of the lever tumbler lock. In Course 3, we'll explore the history of the pin tumbler lock, and then additional history of locks will be presented throughout the program. That concludes this course. We want to thank you for buying this course. We hope you found it interesting and informative. Please visit our website at www.LocksmithDVD.com and review the other courses we have available.